So we have a lot to talk about with AI here, and what I want to kind of dive into is Cloudflare basically taking Next.js, which is open source, and just pretty much using AI. I believe it was 11,000 tokens that they used in 1 week of development, and pretty much made it so you could have Next.js run on serverless deployments. So with Next.js, we all know that it's very proprietary and using Vercel can get very expensive. I know me and you have talked about using Vercel with multiple users racking up quite a bit of a substantial bill. But for any of these serverless providers, you obviously can't just use Next.js as it is because the output of running Next build is proprietary to Vercel. So, seeing how easy it is if something's open source for any company now to say, okay, we want this to run in a certain way instead of this proprietary way that you're doing it, and it just takes them a week to do it. It's pretty incredible that that is now possible to do. When we look here, how they did this in a week, having anything open source, are we worried about things that are open source now not being as available? I know you said you're going to see a lot of things becoming free, but you now run into this issue where anything you have that's open source could just be pretty much cloned and then built in a way that again steals business away from Vercel. Like some people are going to be using Cloudflare serverless functions here because they're a lot cheaper to run than using Vercel, and it works for their environment. So they're going to start swallowing up a lot of Vercel's market. So if I'm Vercel, are you kind of kicking yourself for allowing all your stuff to be open sourced? I mean, even your test open source. I mean, SQ Lite, I believe, they have always had their tests in private. So you could open source the code base, pull it in, do things like that, but all the tests that they've written have been private. And that's a way to kind of mitigate this cloning that could happen so rapidly with AI. Do you think that that is going to be the case where a lot of things become more secretive, open source? Like, yeah, maybe you'll have access to the code, but the test won't be open because they don't want you doing something like this.
Yeah, that's going to depend on kind of a project by project basis, I suppose. Open source can obviously help a lot of projects as well. Like there's different use cases and scenarios that users might run into that, breaks their project. And then the users are able to submit pull requests for what was the fix for them. And that's just stuff that in a closed source, you may not be able to replicate all those environments. So open source wins in that regard, but if you have proprietary logic and stuff that you spend a lot of time on, like I definitely have projects that I wouldn't want open sourced because I just spend too much time on it. At the same time, I've seen people say, all right, because it's going to be cloned already and people are just going to screenshot my website, I'm just going to open source it anyway. I've also seen that.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think Vercel's in a good spot. They have V0, but then again, Cloudflare could just clone V0 and build that themselves as well.
But what is V0? Is V0 just a wrapper around Chat GPT, essentially?
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha, gotcha. So where you know, you talked about just taking screenshots of an application and then building it. I mean, are we starting to get to the point where, for example, any application that I build and have out there, someone could essentially go into the application, take screenshots of the application or film videos, and then spend a week vibe coding and build the whole thing. Again, it will have the same functionality, but this rapid development, there's really no barrier now to a lot of these softwares with that being so readily available to do with just screenshotting. Do you think that's a risk going forward with building software?
It is, and that's been a risk for the last year, but we haven't really seen a lot of it. Like clones pop up, but it's always the main product that remains in the leaderboard.
Mhm.
So it's always kind of been a risk. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly easier to do that now.
It's crazy how easy it is to do it now, and I want you to read something here. Let me see if this shares. You could see why, they wanted to not have to use OpenX to essentially run this on a serverless hosting platform. But let's see, can I use this in production? You can with caution. This is experimental software with known bugs. It works well enough for demos and exploration, but it hasn't been battle tested with real life traffic. Can you self-host? Where is what I wanted to show you? The funniest thing I read here. API service works. It was essentially they talked about, is someone reviewing this code? It's somewhere in here they talked about it, but essentially what the sentence basically said was, we didn't even review this like with human code. We basically just pulled all their tests and ran their tests against the software we were building using Vite instead of TurboPack to bundle all this together. So a lot of companies are running this in production now. They are starting to use this now. I mean, do we start caring less about human review of code at all moving forward? Are we just kind of putting full trust in this?
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation about this with myself this morning in preparation for this because there's certain hierarchies of code that you can definitely ship into production without having to look at it. And it's dependent upon the scope of what you're working on. Like if you need to change a color of some text on a button, you can just have the LLM do it and just like push it. You don't have to look at it.
Mhm.
But if you're doing larger scope changes, then it really is in your best behavior to actually look at the code, understand it, and go, all right, is this extensible enough so that in the future, I'm not like doing any anti-patterns right now. The best coders right now, they're still reviewing the code. They're probably not writing all the code, but they're reviewing a lot of it.